Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This is where we blur the lines between business, nonprofit, and impact. In season 3, we're redefining success for social entrepreneurs looking to grow their revenue. If you have reality changing ideas, this is the place for you. Let's jump right into today's episode. Hey, what is the number one thing that you need to do as an entrepreneur in order to be successful? Well, I can tell you right now, it's get into the right mindset. And our guest today, Naheed Overfield, is going to tell us how we can do just that. She is a coach who focuses not only on mindset, but how we could be more successful as individuals or executives. I'm so excited to add this woman to my network and also to bring her voice to you. So we're going to jump right into this episode and say, Naheed, who are you and how do you make an impact?
Good morning, and thank you for having me over here, Wendy. This is really, I think, a very important subject for entrepreneurs as we want to do something more than just have a business, right? So your shows and what you are doing is really highlighting a passion that so many of us have. How do we create an impact? And so let me start by saying a little bit about who I am. I think most of us start this journey with some kind of setback, if that's the right word, right? I mean, we have to discover ourselves. Maybe setback is not the perfect word. The discovery part is always there. And it's in the discovery that we learn something about ourselves. And that's kind of what I had to go through. I went through this process where I kept putting myself, if I was a square peg, I kept trying to fit myself in a round hole and it didn't work. And I did that for decades, but it still didn't work. I thought if I worked hard enough at it, that somehow the other things will magically work in place. So I came from a background first of psychology, then working in finance, still not feeling satisfied. And then I had no choice but to sit on my stump for a bit and figure out, okay, who am I really and what do I really want? And that's kind of how I've come to this place where I realized for me, mindset was the bottom, like the foundation. If I didn't focus on my mindset, if I didn't work through my mindset, then there's no way, forget making an impact on somebody else's life. I can't make an impact in my own life. So that was ground zero for me.
Oh gosh, there's so many truths in that are when I remember the first conversation I had with you, I said, wow, our experiences are so similar. And then we show up wearing pink in the interview. And I said, gosh, we're just in such a tangent. So I love what you said about the discovery, because that's exactly where I started my business, out of a journey of losing a job, losing a department that I was leading. And then all of a sudden realizing that entrepreneurship was the answer for me to be able to be more free in the work that I'm doing, in the ways that I want to work and who I want to work with. And I love what you said is like, unless I had that self-discovery and knew that about myself, I probably wouldn't have been able to structure my business in the way that is bringing me joy every day. And so I find the value in that experience and that process helpful, but I couldn't describe to anybody like how to do it for yourself. So that's why I love, you're another type of coach. You work with people through the process of unlocking those things. And you have all these interesting tools that I am still learning how to bring in. So can we talk about some of the things in your toolbox? Because I just find some of your practices so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'll take it one step further back because it is just a tool. It's an understanding of how to use the tool and when to use the tool that I think is also important. So, from my perspective, I've now been coaching for 10 years. It's kind of been hard to believe it. But in those 10 years, I've come up with these 3 steps that are indispensable. Step 1 is you have to uncover what the problem is. Where is your mindset tripping you back and holding you back, right? So, that's step 1. Most of us actually don't know the answer. We think we know the answer, we kind of guess at it a little bit, but we don't know the real answer. Then number 2 comes, how do you release? And that's where the tools come in. So you need to have some tools to go into your subconscious. You can't talk yourself out of it. And that's the biggest thing people try to do. They try to pretend things are okay, or they try to tell themselves that things are okay when internally they're not feeling okay. And you cannot pretend that something is working when in really your subconscious knows that, hey, no, this isn't working, right? And then comes the third step. The third step, which is the reframing and the what I like to call retraining. People try to jump to the reframing first before they do the release. So as far as the tools, I love mind-body tools, and there are a lot of them out there, but I specifically focus on EFT, which is known as emotional freedom technique, right? Most people know it as tapping because you tap on your acupressure points. And so why do we do it? It seems like a weird thing. You know, a lot of my clients in the beginning, like, I feel weird doing this. I look weird doing this. But there's a very specific reason that now we know through science. It's activating the part of the brain that is responsible for the fight, flight, and freeze response. Because guess what? That's what holds us back. That's where all those memories are, those past feelings of disappointment and failure and all those limiting beliefs that, we try to suppress. It's in there. So we got to activate that to bring it up, release it, right? You don't want to sit in that uncomfortable emotion. You want to be able to release that emotion. And now all of a sudden it feels like you're on fire, right? You feel like you're moving forward in ways that you've never been able to before.
If you're looking for funding and don't know where to start, let me introduce you to the secrets even grant writers don't know. Idea to Impact, the grant writing course that makes it easy to learn everything about grant writing from A to Z in plain English with on-demand half-hour modules and go-at-your-own-pace workbooks. This course is unlike any other because it delivers insider tips from a grant creator and grant reviewer, me. I've awarded over $35 million throughout my career, and I give you all of the resources and knowledge that you need to apply for millions of dollars on your own. No grant writer needed. Sign up today at wendievelows.com/grants. And I love all the things that you said because you jumped right into what I was really asking, which was the process, right? But I don't know, ever ask an expert to give us their secret sauce without, without knowing how far they want to go. But I love that you did give us a great example of the process. This is sort of 3 steps that you can take to move forward. And the unbreaking or the unraveling step was a very, I don't want to say cathartic and painful process for me,
Yeah.
but I was in that phase. So as you were explaining it, I was like, oh, I remember that. And gosh, that lasted longer than I thought I wanted it to last. And why was I lasting in that mind space for so long? And you're right, I couldn't mind space myself out of it. Like I couldn't do enough meditation or enough baths or enough practices and tools to really get out of it. And I did have to kind of go through that flow. So I really appreciate you breaking that down. And I'm curious if we could dig into that a little bit deeper. If someone who's never seen this before, you said a lot of terms. I have a background in psychology as an undergrad, so I understand how a lot of these things work cognitively. But you talked about reframing and interruption techniques and things that really are rooted in evidence-based practice from psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. But you made it sound so easy to understand. And we hear these words a lot, but I think for some people who don't have any background in this, it might sound jargony or new agey kind of things. But this is for everyone, right? Like this is everyone needs this. So unravel some of that a little bit more.
I think we learn best in stories. So let me kind of share a story. So I do a lot of speaking engagements. And one of the new things I've been doing in my speaking engagements is I take people through an exercise to help them understand what is their unwritten rule that every time they try to declare their value or declare their worth, they break. We all have that. We all have a belief where we want something, but there's this inner rule that we keep hitting up against. We cannot move beyond, where we tell yourself, oh no, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to have that. So any listener who's on here listening to this, thinking to themselves, yeah, I have this rule. It could be with professional success. It could be with weight loss. Okay. So that actually happens a lot. It could also be with personal relationships where we feel like we keep hitting up against the cycle. So this is true. This is for every single person. We all have something in that area. And so when you think about that particular area that you're feeling stuck in, ask yourself this question. What is it that I'm holding myself back for? What's that reason? There's a purpose. There's a reason. If I get this, who's going to judge me? Who's going to tell me I'm doing something wrong? Who's going to question, am I really worth having this? And that's the crux of the work that I do, right? That's the fight, flight, and freeze area, because as soon as you get up to that unwritten rule and you're trying to break it or you're trying to pass it, this internal part, it's a brain part. It's called the amygdala. You don't need to memorize the part of the brain, but it is a real part of the brain. We're not making this up. This is not woo-woo stuff, as you were saying. And so that part gets activated. And so you need a tool, because these are all tools, to tell yourself, all right, so if that part's getting activated, how do I lessen that? How do I break that down? How do I break that cycle between me thinking that I can make anything and do anything I want versus somebody saying, no, you don't really deserve it because you're not smart enough, you're not experienced enough, all the not enoughness. So when you break it down from that perspective, everything else falls away. It doesn't matter whether you're doing cognitive reframing or whether you're doing anything else, you're breaking the cycle. But the cycle has to start with understanding where is it, like what's the root cause, and then having the tools. And that's where people fall off. They don't know what tool to use. And oftentimes these are a little bit vague. They're esoteric. I mean, again, tapping. Who would think that tapping would have anything to do with how you imagine and believe?
Yeah, and you also work with affirmations and some other things as well. So you have quite a bank of I guess, things you can introduce people to, practices that they can use in these situations when they feel like they're in that fight or flight space and need to get out of it.
I do, but I always start with tapping. Tapping is the number one thing that stops the process and the cycle. So when you remove a certain layer of resistance, now you can use affirmations and make them seem true to you. What people do, the mistake people make with affirmations is that they say things that they don't really mean. It's not true to them. And they think, well, okay, if I say it long enough or loud enough or often enough, it will eventually become true. But if you don't believe it because of that fight, flight, and freeze response, the affirmation doesn't land. So you got to have that release first. And then comes the reframing or the retraining, which is through affirmations and a few other techniques as well.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of having a coach like you. I think is where I was going to is you are the introduction to several different methodologies that people use at the right time with the right types of I want to say like techniques in that tool, because each tool is a series of techniques in itself a lot of the time. So you're kind of unlocking all of those things and unraveling all of those things for your clients, which I think is super helpful. The other question I wanted to ask you around this, because again, I think people are starting to get more understanding of mindset with different books that you might be reading or different types of authors that you might be following, even our speakers that you might be following. And some of them are, they all use different types of techniques and practices. So how do you choose which coach is the right one for you or which of the techniques is the right one for you when there are so many options as an entrepreneur or as someone who's seeking to really do this deep mindset work?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. And I'm going to start with the tools first. So, as far as my experience has been, and my experience with my clients has been, it's not the same tool all the time for every single person throughout their lives. You start someplace. You always start at wherever that feels comfortable for you. Okay, so for me, it ended up being with tapping. And then you start to add on, because tapping it works a lot. But then from there on, you're looking for more advanced techniques, because now that you released a certain level of resistance, you're looking for something to go a little bit deeper or something to go a little bit further. And so there are always different tools and techniques on what feels comfortable when you start. I wouldn't ever recommend somebody's trying something that feels like they have to force themselves to do it, because again, your mindset is at play. Whatever you do with the wrong mindset, you're not going to get any results from. And the same is sort of true with a coach. Why me versus another mindset coach who also does tapping? It's the synergy that somebody would have. Some people feel more comfortable with me, but others don't. And for that reason, I'm a big proponent of referring people. Like, I will tell another tapping coach that, hey, this person's not a right fit for me, but maybe you want to talk to them. So it's really about interviewing someone and saying, how do I feel with this person? Because guess what? You're going to be sharing some of the things that feel the deepest and darkest, only to, by the way, realize it's not so bad. You're actually a pretty decent person. That's our biggest fear. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share this. What are they going to think about me? I have most compassion for my clients when they share something like that. And I don't know what it is. I don't I'm not forcing myself, but that's when I'm like, oh, wow, look how human this person is. And look how wonderful this person is as well. So it's about having that connection with your coach to be able to say, I feel safe. Number one, safety. I feel like this person has a process that could lead me through whatever it is I'm looking for, because you don't want to waste time and money, right? Two things that we're never going to get back once you put it out there. So you want to find someone who you think that, yeah, they know what I'm going through. They have a process to be able to help me to get through it. And it makes sense to me, right? They have to understand every step of it, but it makes sense that what they're talking about really resonates. You can't teach truth. You either resonate with it or it doesn't feel truthful to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you might be trying to force something with, working with a coach or even a client. I think you said it beautifully from the entrepreneur's perspective. I want to find fit in the clients that I work with as well. And if I don't think that they're the right ones for me, I have a network of people who do similar things that they might also benefit from for whatever unique problem that they have. And I think that that's really important entrepreneur point that you blended into that answer. So I wanted to call that out. So I think that it's really interesting to hear, kind of you alluded to that you discovered tapping and all these other things, but as an entrepreneur, how did you go? What is your personal journey of how you discovered you wanted to help other people? And this is sort of what you wanted to do with your part of your life. Like what is your story behind how you built your business?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, I started off as an undergrad psych major as well. I was planning to do my PhD in research, and I got to a point where I thought, because research in biopsychology or neuroscience is all animal based. And after a while, I was like, I can't do this. I'm a huge animal lover. I really can't work with that. And I was working in a lab with birds. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So without having any understanding of what the business world is, I just graduated with a degree in psychology, which is now worthless because I don't want to pursue it any further. I'm like, you know what? Stock market. That's what I want to do. Have no idea what goes into being goes into business or accounting or finance, but somehow or the other, I managed through my mindset and sheer determination and perseverance. I got myself through to the Nasdaq stock market. And then from there, I did my MBA. And then from there, I moved on to one of the big four accounting firms. And what was happening was with every stage, I was moving further and further away from what was true to me. I didn't know it at that time. I thought I was living, the American dream. You do this, then you do that, then you have your white picket house, your house with a white picket fence. That was what the trajectory was until I came to my most recent job and I hit a brick wall. It was just absolutely the wrong thing, the wrong place. Everything that you could possibly think of for me was wrong. And so after 3 years of doing that, I was afraid that if I didn't walk away now, the longer you're in a job, the harder it is to walk away. But I was really concerned that I would either have a mental breakdown or a physical breakdown. And I really thought I could do some long-term damage to myself. So I did one of the hardest things, which was quit my job without having any other backup. I gave my parents 1 month's notice before I gave my work because, they were terrified that they got an adult daughter who's just walking away from this very good paying job. So I quit. And similar to your story about where you said you wish you weren't in that stage for so long, I gave myself 1 year. I'm like, 1 year is plenty of time for me to figure myself out, right? And here I am almost 15 years later, still focusing on it. And so while I was in that process where I'd quit my job, I was looking for another job, looking for very traditional types of jobs, I came across this woman who's a therapist actually from New York, and she started talking about tapping. And I couldn't explain to you why I gravitated to that because at that time I was just constantly reading and studying and learning. So I learned about lots of different techniques and people, but tapping somehow or the other it just clicked. And so I purchased these, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a job at that time. So I purchased a set of her CDs. They weren't even DVD. Nobody even has a CD player anymore, actually. So you know how long ago that was. So I purchased these CDs and I started working on myself. And it was amazing what I was uncovering through tapping. For the first time, I realized, wow, it's not me who's dumb. It's not me who's stupid. It's not me who's lazy. It's not me who cannot accomplish anything. It's the belief that I had starting from when I was in first grade, because that's where those beliefs started getting introduced to me. And it started, for me, it was my teachers. And when I realized that, I thought to myself, wow, I cannot be the only person who had, imposter syndrome through the roof and everything else. So I was sabotaging myself. And that's really what caused me to think there's got to be other people out there who are dealing with this, and they don't even know that they're dealing with it. Like I didn't know I was dealing with it. So that's really how my coaching started.
I think it's just really a fantastic journey for each individual to go through that. And entrepreneurship really brings you out into that space of needing to understand yourself in order to create new things that perhaps the world has never seen before. And you probably work with clients just like I do who are bringing these really amazing things out into the space that whatever their expertise is in, and you're kind of helping them to unlock those pieces as you go. And so I'm wondering if you could just give us a story of something you've seen or some kind of really big mindset shift. I know you were talking about stories earlier, so I'm like, yeah, let's dig into a story. What kinds of mindset shifts have you seen people be able to make and get some really amazing results after?
Yeah, I like to always go back to one of my earlier clients. There's lots of, let me step back and say for each client, what they have achieved is a big accomplishment for themselves, right? I mean, because sometimes their mindset is so stuck, and even if it's a small shift, it's still a big change for them. So, from that perspective, we always like to honor and also celebrate all the wins. But one of the people who I had really early on, one of my clients really early on, his name was John, and he came to me because he used to be an independent consultant. He would go out and bid on contracts. And when John would bid on these contracts, they would be in the 10, 15,000, maybe $20,000 range. Now, this guy's a really smart guy. He's a PhD. He's got almost didactic memory. So, I mean, let me just say he's got a lot of potential inside of him. And so I always do this little exercise with my new prospects, asking them where they want to go, like what's their goal. And the exercise works is they first give me a goal, and then I make them do the exercise again. So the first goal that he gave me was 50,000, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, that's a good amount, because 20,000 is his high end. You double it, so he feels like that's within his range of comfort. But I said, let's go beyond your range of comfort. And if you didn't have to worry about how you were going to get there, what the steps are, what you have to give up, or anything like that, what do you feel like you really absolutely deserve to get? And his answer was almost instantly $150,000. That's a 200% increase. So we worked together for a little while, Wendie. What do you think his next contract was for? Just take a
A,
wild guess.
a half a million?
Well, not so far
Oh.
yet, but that's a good number. So his next contract was for 140,000, with the ability to renew for another 140,000, but he chose not to take it because he had a $200,000 job offer, which he decided to take. So, right? So, I mean, so here he is, even exceeding his own goals. But guess what? That $140,000 contract was always out there. It's not like it didn't appear before when he was bidding for 10,000, 20,000. He could have always bid for it. His mindset prevented him from even trying. And that's the difference. Nothing changed. He didn't become smarter. He didn't get more expertise or experience in something. He just simply had the confidence to be able to bid for it. And I mean, it seems so simple, but it's so profound, right?
I think as a business owner, it is simple, but it is profound because you are worried about biting off more than you can chew, right? Especially as a small business, when you're growing or in a growth stage, even a growth stage nonprofit, you don't want to commit to a project or a program or a grant or something, some sort of commitment that is bigger than you're able to handle, because I think you're like, oh no, but you're right. There has to be a mindset where that growth is possible in order for it to happen.
Yeah, we tend to limit ourselves even before we really consider the possibilities. We go straight into what do I have to give up? What am I losing? What are the trade-offs, right? That's the first thing we go into. And the question is, what if they aren't as bad as you think they are, right? I mean, if we start asking ourselves from that perspective, if all of humanity thinks that way, where we're limiting ourselves, Rome would never have been built. We wouldn't be going to Mars, let alone the moon, right? Because all we'd be focusing on is the limitation part.
Yeah, that's so good. So, the last couple of questions I wanted to ask you, one is going to be about your well-being and yourself and your own how you take care of yourself. So, we'll save that one for last, but this question is really about a challenge or something that you've overcome. This season is all about redefining success. And so, I'm curious, in your own building your business as the founder of what you're doing, how have you faced a challenge and overcome it, learned a lesson and got through it? Just give us some insight into how you built your own business.
So every challenge in my life has always been focused on confidence and trust. Right? Those two kind of go hand in hand. I mean, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of examples for me personally related to that. First and foremost, the confidence to start this business. I'll tell you, I didn't want to do this. I was terrified to start coaching to the point where, in order to distract myself, I used to eat and I put on 20 pounds just because I was so scared to do this coaching business because I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe that I had something inside of me to be able to help someone. What if I made it worse, right? So that was a huge fear that I had to start working right from the beginning. But even today, every now and then, I will meet somebody who wants to make a change, but they're not open to making a change. And as an entrepreneur, as a coach, I have to remind myself that my success, as strange as it seems, is not defined on the success of my clients, right? I mean, I cannot tell me that I'm only good if every client meets my definition of success. And that's what we tend to do. And that's what all of us in this space generally have this. We tie our feelings of self-worth on how our clients do. And that's a constant message I will say to this day. My coach reminds me of to say that, hey, trust in your process, trust in your intuition, and trust that you know how to get somebody there and get yourself out of the way. It's none of your business where that person is. It's that person's business. It's where he or she chooses to be in this moment. Don't try to force their journey to be what you want it to be.
Yes, that's such a good reminder. I love that reminder for all of us who do have work with clients and do have outcomes that they're trying to reach or that we've set as goals together. And then when you don't see folks achieve, you're always going, "Oh no!" So I appreciate that reminder. And the last question for you before we kind of wrap up this episode is really around how do you take care of yourself and maintain your own well-being so that you can continue to show up and serve other people and help others.
That is so important. I think about this. I have a bit of a luxury. We run our own business. If I was a nurse or if I was, somebody in the helping field or where they are on schedule, they don't get enough downtime. I really think about this quite a lot. So for me, the way I tell myself is I need space in my calendar. I need white space in my calendar. So in the middle of the day, I take off for an hour to go walk my dog. I wake up pretty early in the morning. First thing I do is listen to my meditations. I do it first thing in the morning and I do it last thing at night. If I have time in between, I will do that as well. But my walks are actually quite meditative walks. It's not just letting my brain just wander. I get very focused on it. And the biggest thing is, and this is sometimes hard for people to hear, invest in yourself. I do ongoing coaching. I have a business coach and I also have my own personal coaching, which actually then feeds into my business because I use a lot of what I'm learning. But I need that ongoing coaching. Every year, I just re up and go to the next coaching level. And a lot of people want that quick fix, that free thing, or that small $50 or $90 investment. But that's not where transformation happens. And, you start where you are able. I have to start at that place too, but then recognize that this should be a priority. If you are important to you, then this also should be a priority for you.
Yes, if growing yourself and growing your business is a priority, then you're going to invest in a coach. I don't understand how you do entrepreneurship without having access to someone to help you get through these barriers, and someone, again, like you, who has different tools and techniques that you've invested in learning and that, others can learn through you. So I really appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom with us today. All of the different perspectives that you have are so amazing to me. I could talk to you for hours and hours about these things. So I just wanted to bring your voice to the podcast and to uplift it, because I just think you have such a beautiful message in the way that you frame the work that you're doing, the way that you help and transform other people. So thank you for all the work that you do, Naheed, and for being part of the network and the collective. And just let people know where they can find you and how they can reach out.
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, I really appreciate being part of this conversation with you because, as you said, we think very similarly. We may have slightly different ways because you bring the same workout in a slightly different way. And the best way for people to find out more about me really is to get onto my website. It's Oberfeld Coaching, Oberfeld coaching.com. And you're going to learn I have group coachings and also individual coaching. So if anybody feels like they're stuck, love to have a conversation just to see what's that next step look like for you.
It's wonderful. I'm glad you spelled that, because I would have spelled it wrong. So, all right. So today's guest has been Naheed Overfield. We talked about all things mindset, EFT tapping, and all the techniques that you can use to help keep into the correct entrepreneurial mindset. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode, and come back soon. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation, and we look forward to having you come back. If you're curious about something that we've said, it's probably down in the show notes. Make sure that you check those out. And do you want the secrets to grow your nonprofit or business, make it more sustainable and more profitable? Hop into my Learn, Grow, Thrive University, where I give you exclusive access to resources, mini courses, and templates for free. All you have to do is sign up with your email address at wendyveloz.com/university. See you next episode.